You think you've seen tough questioning in Congress? Think again. Bennie Thompson just ripped Secretary Kristi Noem to her face, calling out repeated lies, illegal deportations, and broken promises. He didn't hold back, and the truth he exposed will shock you. Stay tuned.
Gentleman yields. I think we've covered everyone. Mr. Ranking Member, you're recognized for a closing statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to associate myself with Mr. Garcia's statement. I can't believe that we would send somebody or anyone from our country somewhere else and say, well, we cut off all communication. We're a better country than that. And I just thank Mr. Garcia for raising that question. Secretary Noem, at the start of this hearing, you stood here and took an oath to tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Then you sat down and dodged the truth over and over and over for a little more than 3 hours, so help you God. You repeatedly testified that you and the Department of Homeland Security will follow the Constitution, the laws, and the order of the Supreme Court. Well, the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution says that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And yet, a federal court found that the Department of Homeland Security, under your watch, believes that it has a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process. So you did not tell the truth to this committee today when you said you would follow the Constitution and comply with due process. You also testified that you follow orders of the Supreme Court of the United States and all courts. But the Supreme Court unanimously directed the government to facilitate the return of Kilmar Garcia to the United States. But you just testified before this committee that Kilmar Garcia will never return to the United States. So you didn't tell the truth to this committee again when you said that you comply with court orders and decisions. You've overseen the deportation of U.S. citizen children and have claimed that their parents chose to take their children with them. But you produced no evidence that the mother, let alone both parents, of those children freely gave consent to have their children deported from the United States. In fact, everyone involved in those cases say that the mothers, in fact, did not want their children, especially their sick American children, deported. In fact, your agency lured families to ICE appointments under false pretenses, lied to them, refused to let them speak with an attorney or children's father, and deported them before a court had time to even hear the case. You've given yourself the unilateral right to deport anyone you deem a threat. You refuse to comply with court orders that try to stop you. That puts all of us at risk. Beyond your false testimony about the administration's deportation policies, you falsely stated that the administration is focused on a full range of DHS's missions. Instead, your budget request appears to reflect a view that DHS's sole purpose is to be a border wall construction agency that deports U.S. citizen children with cancer. Your budget proposed cuts to cybersecurity, emergency preparedness, and aviation security. Even before asking Congress for these budget cuts, you've overseen mass reductions in the workforce at CISA and FEMA. Despite repeated requests from this committee on how many people have been fired or have been bullied into quitting before their tenure, DHS has refused to share that information. So it should worry every American that we do not know how many people are left at FEMA to respond to disasters, and how many cyber defenders still work at CISA as China and other adversaries attack our systems every day. And you made clear in response to my questioning, you have no written plans for FEMA. It is very apparent that also is no plan for CISA, where you are trying to gut the agency's funding and falsely claiming that CISA is a censorship agency. Since CISA never censored anyone, but now we are all paying the price for you buying into a baseless conspiracy theory. Secretary Noem, I'm glad that you finally came to testify before this committee, but I'm disappointed, along with a lot of my Democratic colleagues, that you stood here and took an oath to tell the truth, then repeatedly failed to do so to this committee. Let me just say, if you dance with the devil long enough, he's liable to follow you home. I hope that you will stop dancing around the truth and start telling the truth so this committee can do its work, helping to defend DHS from the attacks you've launched against it. Mr. Chair.
Bennie Thompson didn't hold back. From the moment he began his closing statement, it was clear he had reached the limits of patience, and rightfully so. Secretary Kristi Noem had spent more than 3 hours before the committee dodging direct questions, sidestepping accountability, and, as Thompson bluntly put it, failing to tell the truth. The severity of his words can't be understated. This wasn't partisan theater. It was a demand for clarity and integrity from the head of the Department of Homeland Security, an agency tasked with protecting American citizens. Thompson meticulously laid out the discrepancies between Noem's testimony and reality. She repeatedly claimed that DHS would follow the Constitution, respect due process, and obey court orders. Yet federal courts had found the department in violation of these very principles. He highlighted the case of Kilmar Garcia, a legal resident whom the Supreme Court directed DHS to return to the United States. But Noem admitted he would never be allowed back. That contradiction is not a minor procedural quibble, it's a fundamental breach of the trust that Congress and the public place in the agency. Perhaps even more shocking were the examples of U.S. citizen children being deported while undergoing cancer treatment, along with families misled into ICE appointments under false pretenses. Thompson emphasized that DHS gave itself unilateral power to deport individuals deemed a threat, disregarding due process, parental consent, and legal oversight. This is not an abstract problem. These are real families, real children, and real communities affected by administrative overreach. By systematically presenting these cases, Thompson made it clear that Noem's testimony didn't just misrepresent policy, it endangered lives and violated the law. The commentary also highlighted a broader issue with DHS under Noem's leadership: mismanagement and misprioritization. Thompson pointed out that the budget request heavily favored border enforcement and deportation operations, while key missions like cybersecurity, emergency preparedness, and aviation security faced cuts. Workforce reductions at CISA and FEMA compounded the problem, leaving the nation more vulnerable to natural disasters, cyber attacks, and other threats. These were not mere budget line items. They represented human lives, critical infrastructure, and national security. Thompson made it clear that Americans should be deeply concerned about the lack of transparency and planning within DHS. What made this hearing particularly significant is Thompson's approach. He didn't rely on rhetoric alone. He systematically contrasted Noem's statements with verifiable facts, court decisions, and documented outcomes. He highlighted the consequences of ignoring due process, exposed the gaps in DHS's planning, and underscored the human cost of administrative decisions. His insistence on accountability demonstrated the role of Congress not as a political instrument, but as a guardian of checks and balances, ensuring that agencies operate within the law and with public oversight. Thompson's final point resonated on a human and moral level. He reminded the committee and the public that if you dance with the devil long enough, he's liable to follow you home. The metaphor was stark. The erosion of truth and accountability within DHS doesn't just stay inside bureaucratic walls. It spreads, affecting policies, families, and the credibility of the agency itself. In other words, ignoring the truth has real consequences, and Thompson made sure that message was unmistakable. This hearing is a powerful example of why oversight matters. It's not about political points or viral moments. It's about ensuring that those in power are held to the laws and principles that protect all Americans. Thompson's relentless questioning, combined with his careful documentation of DHS's failures, provides a roadmap for how Congress can confront mismanagement while advocating for the public interest. For viewers, this is more than a political hearing. It's a lesson in accountability, the importance of truth in governance, and the real human stakes behind administrative decisions. DHS is not an abstract agency. It's a collection of missions that touch every American, from public safety to disaster response to cybersecurity. Understanding these stakes is critical to understanding why congressional oversight exists in the first place. If you found this breakdown informative and want to stay on top of how government accountability really works, make sure to subscribe to Left Lens and hit the like button. It helps us continue breaking down complex hearings, exposing the truth, and giving you the context you won't see anywhere else.